everyone, and hello Nina, thank you so much for joining me today for the latest patient perspectives as we take a look at how genomics is impacting patient lives. Today we are joined by Nina, whose daughter was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition. So Nina, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. My name's Nina Knight, and I, as Shannon said, I have a daughter with an ultra-rare genetic disease called acrodysostosis. I'm a parent of two children, Harry and Lily. Lily is the one that has acrodysostosis. She's 9 years old, and as a result of finding out that she had this rare disease, we found a Facebook support group, and then from there we've set up a charity to set up a patient registry, and with the idea to promote research, and our aims are to get treatments and ultimately to get a cure.
I mean, as you said, your daughter was diagnosed with acrodysostosis. For those who don't know, would you be able to just kind of describe what this condition is and kind of what are the typical symptoms?
Yeah, so acrodysostosis, as I said, is a rare, ultra rare genetic disease, and it is described as a bone dysplasia, but it basically affects every system in the body. So it's quite a hard one to describe, and we actually through our community have collated a list of, I think we've got more than 160 medical issues that are related to acrodysostosis and our children. So they range from intellectual disability to hormone resistance. There's loads and loads of sort of physical stuff that happens to our children. Lots of they have to have lots of surgeries. They live, you know, as they get older, they live in a lot of pain. And even when they're children, they live in a lot of pain. There's a lot of surgeries related. I suppose an example of one would be that their bones fuse, so one leg will stop growing. So they have to have leg lengthening operations. They have a lot of spinal problems, so stenosis, scoliosis, and of course that to rectify that they have to have surgeries. A lot of children end up in adult life in wheelchairs because their mobility is very limited. So it just, I mean, it sort of affects everything. Speech and language. So they'll be under lots of different disciplines like physiotherapy, OT, speech and language. You know, the list is endless, and they'll see lots and lots of doctors through their lives, and they'll have lots of hospital appointments and lots of surgeries. Yeah, I suppose that's it's quite a hard one to describe because it affects so many things.
When did your daughter kind of first present with symptoms, and when did you kind of think that, oh, maybe something might not be quite right?
Yeah, when Lily was born, actually, I suppose it started. I was thinking about this yesterday. It started when I was pregnant with Lily. They thought that it showed some sort of some markers for, and they thought perhaps she had Down syndrome. So we did a test for that, and it all came back clear. And I understand this now, that they only test for like not that many genetic diseases when they're, or not for many sort of problems when you're pregnant. So actually there's lots and lots of rare diseases that won't be picked up if you have a test when you're pregnant. But I'm really glad that they didn't, because I don't know, I wouldn't have wanted to make any decisions one way or the other, and I'm so happy that we have Lily. So no, they didn't pick it up, but it was a very difficult pregnancy due to that, because I had to go to the hospital every single week to have scans, and then eventually they induced me because she was so tiny and she wasn't growing. But then she was born, and that's when I realised that something was a bit different about Lily. Physically, her face had features that were slightly different, and her hands and her feet were really tiny. So it was kind of subtle, and actually, so I knew instantly, and my husband knew instantly, but then we then sort of said this to doctors, and because she was growing, so from she was born at like 4 pounds, she grew quite quickly, so everyone was quite happy that she was a healthy baby. But we were worried because we just thought, oh, there's something just not quite, just a bit different. And so we did speak to doctors. And they would say, we'd have comments like, well, all babies come in all different shapes and sizes, you know, don't worry about it, send us off. And then I just remember it was a really difficult time because I would go to sort of mother and baby groups and feel really alienated because you know, she wasn't doing the things that other babies were doing, and I knew there was something quite different. And eventually, a health visitor came and did her 8-month check, and realised that she wasn't holding her head up, and she wasn't sort of doing the things that a typical child would be doing at her age. So I mean, I was just so grateful to that woman that she referred us to genetics. And then when we met the geneticist, she was actually she misdiagnosed Lily, and for 2 weeks we thought that Lily had, well, I didn't think, because I actually didn't Google it, but my husband did, thought that Lily had, because the doctor said don't Google it until I've got a proper result for you, but I think it's this other rare disease. And my husband Googled it and actually thought for 2 weeks that Lily had a life-limiting rare disease, which was really, really upsetting. But then the great thing was that when we found out she had acrodysostosis, it was we were quite happy, because it wasn't the other thing. So actually, she probably did us a favour. So anyway, so eventually, after a few weeks, she said, "No, I think it's not this. I think it's acrodysostosis." And at that point, she was just clinically diagnosing Lily from what she'd seen and what she'd spoken to colleagues, etc. And then Lily's blood test went to France, and when Lily was 2 years old, we got her molecular diagnosis from Paris, and we were very fortunate because prior to that, in 2014, Lily was born in 2012. In 2014, they were able to molecularly diagnose children with acrodysostosis, and that hadn't been possible before, even though the disease has been around for about 40 years, so or been identified for 40 years. So that we were very fortunate, and to get a diagnosis at 2 years old is very lucky in this sphere. So yeah.
What was it kind of like for you getting that diagnosis? Because as you said, like at the start you kind of felt that there was something not quite right, whereas like other people were kind of telling you, oh no, like it's fine. What was it like for you to finally kind of get that diagnosis?
Oh, I mean, it's sort of I'm sure other parents feel the same way. You're actually really relieved, very relieved, and then you're very like, and then you're just a bit sad. I mean, there's all sorts of emotions that go. I think people go through, and I don't feel like this now. It's a sort of, you can describe it as a sort of grief that you get you've been worried for a long time, and then you get the diagnosis, and then the reality of that sort of kicks in, and you have to mobilize and work out what life's going to look like with that diagnosis. But it was really good because it meant that we were really brilliantly supported through our local community in terms of there's an amazing facility called Sunshine House that was just on our doorstep, where Lily was able to go for speech and language, occupational therapy, hearing tests, physiotherapy, and I met other sort of mums who were in a similar situation to me. So that was amazing. And also, of course, then suddenly Evelina and Great Ormond Street hospitals were looking at other things to make sure that there weren't any other underlying health issues that we needed to be worried about with Lily. So it was a sad time, but it was also a very good time in the process.
How much was kind of known at the time about the condition, and how did you kind of then have to teach yourself about kind of what it was going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, not much was known, and of course, you look online and you're trying to find information. I think we were sent. I mean, we were sent home with like a two-page, like not even a leaflet. It was just it was a document that. It was a published bit of research and it was so like vague, and also it also had some quite bleak information on it. So you didn't know whether that applied to your child, and we didn't know any other families, so we didn't know, does this apply to Lily? Is Lily going to be, so it was there was hardly anything. And actually, it wasn't that we didn't have there's basically nothing, there was nothing out there. So we realized that, yeah, we had to just kind of, and I think that's obviously why they did loads of tests and make sure that Lily, so they were doing their sort of stuff, but not because they had any knowledge about, what the condition meant, or what the future held.
How do you think that's kind of changed now, like the information that's out there now, and like how kind of has your knowledge progressed from obviously that kind of diagnosis to now and living with the condition?
Oh, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think the biggest, it's not that there's any more information out there. It's more that because we found this community, our Facebook support community, we have a number of families that we have access to who've got ranging ages of children, and so we're able to share information, and that's just like, it's gold. This is not information that even the doctors can tell us. So it's or they kind of go, they say things like, well, it might be, but I've only ever seen one other case, so I have no idea whether that is, whether that's actual information or data, or whether that's just an anecdotal thing that's not related to acrodysostosis. So yeah, that's how the information has evolved, but not because there's anything out there in the sort of in the public arena.
Yeah. Would you be able to just kind of discuss how you kind of got involved in the support group and how that kind of came about?
Yes. So early on, when Lily got first diagnosed, I think it was when, because it was 2014. We asked to see if we could, can we see a geneticist that might have met other families, and so we could perhaps, our first thing was we just thought it was really important to meet other families, as it was so rare and there wasn't any other information out there. So we saw a geneticist at Great Ormond Street, and I'll never forget what she said, but we were like, at the end of our sort of, she was just looking at Lily and saying, well, she's, it was all a bit vague actually. It was sort of like, well, she seems to be doing okay. And then we were like, okay, because we kind of thought, I don't know why, you always think you're going to get answers, but you don't. There's no answers to be had. That's about sort of us going out and finding them. But anyways, at the end of the consultation, we said to her, we would really love to meet other families. We believe that you may know some in the UK because you're the only person here that sort of knows other people. And she just turned around and said, I can't see any value in you meeting other families, or probably just upset you. And so we were like, what? And actually it was my husband, not me. He was so, defiantly went home and just started Googling to find people in the world. And brilliantly, it's just funny, isn't it? The power of the internet. We found one family. They were in Australia, and they had set up a Facebook group, and their Facebook group, which was a support group for acrodysostosis, had two members, which was the husband and wife, and it was for their daughter. So there was basically one patient. We found them, and then other people found, and we all sort of evolved. And then that's it. I think when we got to 26 people, then a geneticist came and found us, and that's when the things sort of started to get a bit more interesting with regards to where we are now.
There is a charity now, isn't there? That is kind of like promoting kind of like information and research and everything that's kind of going on in relation to that condition.
Yes, that's right. So basically, the Facebook group was our support group. When we got to 26 members, a geneticist from Spain found us. And she said, this is amazing. We've never seen this many patients this was at 26 patients. We've never seen this many patients in one place. We've been working on a consensus statement for the diagnosis and treatment of, or management of, PHP disorders and related disorders, and we were the related disorders. So we were just like tagged on the end of this consensus statement. And she said, right, we're going to be in Paris for 3 days, and we're going to be discussing this statement so that it can be published, and then, you know, worldwide, worldwide, and everyone can see it and know what, you know, about the diagnosis and management of these diseases. Would anybody like to come? And my husband and I were like, we'll go. So we went to this 3-day event, or meeting, and there were 38 different experts that we met at that that meeting, and it was amazing. And we sort of went with a whole list of questions that we were going to ask them about acrodysostosis, you know, thinking that we were going to get answers. And actually what we realized is the experts with regards to, you know, a lot of rare diseases don't have the answers. And we actually realized that we as parents and as patients have a sort of, you know, we hold the information, and what we need to be doing is sharing that information with the experts in you know, worldwide, so that they can go and, you know, do research with that information. So I came back and we decided, and I thought, right, okay, what we're going to do. So I said, I realized that this Facebook group that we've had for the last, you know, however, at that point it might have been like a year or so, we've got all of this lovely information. You know, everyone goes, oh, do you know what happens when, and everyone like gives their answers and all that. You know, it's actually proper data. It all just gets lost in the Facebook ether. So I thought, right, okay, we need to get that information into a patient registry, and that way the doctors can have that information, and then they can use it to do research and to find treatments. So that's where and that's why we started the charity, so that we could be more official and do it properly. And we're just about to launch the patient registry, but there's so many other things that have come from having the charity. We've partnered with Great Ormond Street Children's Charity and Sparks to find and fund a researcher. Which we found one. We've raised the money for it. To Great Ormond Street have contributed. I think their portion of it is 175,000. Is that right? And we've done the other part, you know, the other 25%. And yeah, we're just about to do a 3-year research project into acrodysostosis, and they're talking, you know, within that research project, they are talking about possible treatments for people affected by acrodysostosis. So it's amazing.
Yeah. What have been some of the kind of challenges kind of setting up this charity?
Good question. I was trying to think about that, and maybe I'm just ridiculously positive. I mean, what's been really amazing is that every time, like, we've done something, you know, I've worked in business and worked, you know, in things throughout my life, and everything has felt quite hard, but weirdly, this has felt quite easy. I mean, it's hard work, and sometimes it takes a lot of, actually, I mean, I suppose the challenge is that it always makes me, you know, I'm like, we do applications, and then we have to write about our children. I have to get like stories from case studies from other parents, and then you read that, and then actually the reality of what our children are going to go through and what they are going through. That's, I'd say, for me, like, personally for me, that is a challenge. I find that very hard, and I think that's when it's hard to separate running the charity with thinking about why you're doing, like, the personal reasons for it. But in terms of, like, so far, touch wood, nothing has been that much of a challenge. Like, I feel really grateful and fortunate. We have an amazing community who have just been, like, I mean, especially with the fundraising, yeah, they were incredible. So yeah. I don't know what our challenges are. I mean, I suppose our challenges might be that we're very small. So of course, you know, it's like, well, who cares about 100 patients? So that might be that might be a challenge, but we're ignoring that and we're steaming ahead. So
As you
so
said, you are kind of a small charity. So what has it been like for you trying to get funding for like various research projects?
yeah, that's yeah. Again, it was so when we did our fundraising for the Great Ormond Street partnership last year. So we didn't even think when we did this part when Great Ormond Street did the national call, and they asked, basically they put a national call out to the whole of the UK and say, are there any researchers that are interested in doing any research with acrodysostosis, for example? And we thought, we'll put our names down for it. No one's going to want to research it. Anyway, 4 researchers came back. So we were like, oh my God, now we've got to raise the money. So I was like, God, how am I going to do? So I thought, right, okay, so we're gonna divide up the responsibility. So I recruited 70 families to raise £1,000 each, and they were amazing. So this is our families plus friends and blah blah blah, and so we got 70 families to raise 70,000, and we did it in 20 days. So we raised through a crowdfunding exercise. So again, I'm sure that if I was doing maybe funding applications, that might be a bit more difficult because it's quite competitive out there. But in terms of our very, very limited experience so far, I've been absolutely, blown away by our communities, our acrodysostosis community galvanizing and just getting out there and raising funds. But also that, it was an amazing project.
I saw recently that you kind of got Olivia Coleman involved to try and help raise awareness and also say acrodysostosis. How did you get her kind of involved in kind of raising that awareness?
Yeah. So she's a neighbour of ours, or was a neighbour of ours, and a very, very good friend of a good friend of ours. And she was so our friend just went, look, I'm just going to ask her, to see what and we wanted to make it funny because so we actually wrote a little script for her, and she was so brilliant. She was like, of course I'll do it, absolutely. And she was really up for doing the script. We did put a little funny thing. She said she wouldn't want to do it because she's too lovely. We were going to put something in about her Oscar, and but she decided not to do that. But yes, we just basically asked. I think other people will agree with this, especially in these tiny little charities that we all run. That you kind of you pull in favors and you ask, and actually generally people are so lovely, and especially because I suppose all of our funds, everything we raise, it's not like I'm getting a salary or anyone that's volunteering or helping or assisting or no one's getting. It's basically every single penny that we raise goes straight back to research. So it's quite a nice, it's quite a tangible thing, isn't it? She knows that if she spends 10 minutes doing something, and so it was so kind of her, and she was so gracious and just brilliant that she agreed to doing the funny script.
No, it is really funny. How do you think, why do you think that the patient voice is kind of so important in kind of raising that awareness, and how can researchers and organizations ensure that they incorporate patient voices more?
Good question. I think the patient voice is vital. It's completely vital. I don't know. I mean, I suppose I'm speaking from a sort of rare disease perspective. Is that without the patient voice, often the medics don't have the information. They don't have the experience of something, or so far I know it wasn't like this in the past, and I know that researchers and medics were very separate to the communities that perhaps they were researching for. But I think now everybody's understanding that there's a massive benefit from that sort of symbiotic relationship where the researchers are giving something, but the patients and can also provide like I said at the beginning of the conversation, a golden information that you would not get. You wouldn't be able to get that just by looking at the papers that have been published or the couple of patients that you've met in your lifetime. I think it's vital.
What has it kind of also been like trying to work with researchers and trying to kind of ensure that they're listening to your voice and kind of working together?
Yeah, so far, so when going back to when we went to the consensus, obviously we met 38 experts all at once. That was that was brilliant. So after that, I went back to I knew the 6 people that knew the most about acrodysostosis, and I approached them and asked them to be part of our medical team. So they are, and they're clinicians as well as the researchers, and they very brilliantly have all said yes. So they're part of our medical team. We do a lot of sort of work with them, and if we've got questions or we're not done like massive collaborations yet. I know that they're in the background, ready to help whenever we need it, and I know they'll really help with the patient registry when that's launched this year. And then in terms of the research, for example, the researchers that applied for the Great Ormond Street funding, they've been so open to speaking to us, hearing the information that we had. I think actually in their applications they've used information that we've provided to them so that they can kind of have a better understanding of acrodysostosis. So I think so far the very, again, my limited knowledge, my limited experience of working with researchers, I found them all to be really receptive and really open to working with patients and with patient organisations.
Looking ahead, what are the future plans for the group, and kind of what are your hopes as well for the future?
Yeah, I mean our main focus. So obviously we've got the Facebook group, which is more of a support group, but in terms of the charity, that is all about the research. It's all about getting research started, and then also the main aim is to get treatments. We've got no treatments at the moment, and also to get, obviously, even just like to begin with, a better understanding of the disease, but also from there to get treatment, so that our children aren't sort of facing a life of loads and loads of surgeries, and aren't facing an adult life of lots of pain and just generally not having a very quality of life. So that is definitely our aim. We've already signed up for next year's Great Ormond Street National Call. So hopefully there'll be another lot of researchers out there that want to look into acrodysostosis.
Yeah. Are there any sort of kind of misconceptions surrounding the condition that you kind of want to address?
Yeah, I'd say, which is something we're working on at the moment, is that, so for example, if our children, our children do not present as neurotypical children, and so they have a very high pain threshold, for example. So if they go to A&E and they've broken a bone, often that it's not overlooked, but a parent will be dismissed because they're not convinced that there's that there is anything wrong, because the child's not really screaming the hospital down. So that's one misconception. Our children are, although they have lots of issues with speech and language, and other things, like some children that can't talk but can read and write. So obviously within society they're treated differently, and they are underestimated because they're all bright, even though they have intellectual disability. They're all super bright. Yes, I suppose that would be a misconception that we'd like changed.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Nina. It's been great. You're sharing your story, and I really, really hope that this kind of interview helps to raise some awareness of the condition as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you.
Hello everyone, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure you check out some of our other videos in our series by subscribing below or going to our website frontlinegenomics.com. I hope you enjoy.